You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. This is our final show for this season, and today we're continuing with what we began last week, a two-part feature, a series of conversations with the actual staff of the Women's Media Center, the women who bring you news, statistics, research, features, and exposés from an alternate reality, markedly more honest, fair, and vividly different from the one with which standard patriarchal media surrounds us. Last week we spoke with Tiffany Nguyen, Julie Zeilinger, Lauren Wolfe, and Crystal Williams-Chancellor about their departments, respectively, the reports on the entertainment industry, young feminism, climate change and its earth defenders, victims, and champions, and the Women's Media Center reports on the media industry itself and everything it touches, reports which have become justifiably famous. In a previous program, we had already interviewed Soraya Chamali, who, together with Ashley Judd, leads the Women's Media Center's Speech Project, monitoring the Internet and all that implies. And today we'll be talking with four more of these editor, researcher, activists, wonder women. But first, I must warn you that we'll be running a bit long this week, although not quite as long as last week. But there's a lot of waterfront to cover. So let's go inside the front lines. This week, we'll be speaking with the following. Frances Nguyen, who edits Women Under Siege, that is, women in crisis and conflict situations, is a freelance journalist covering violence against women, race, identity, sexualized violence in particular, and othering and the American dream. She's phoning in from Turkey, and we hope she'll be able to stay on the line and not get cut off. And there's Barbara Findlin, who is features editor for the Women's Media Center. Features is a broad section covering everything from op-ed articles through reporting to in-depth pieces. Barbara's been working as a journalist for more than 25 years, including 13 years at Ms. Magazine, where she ultimately served as executive editor. She's the editor of the anthology Listen Up, Voices from the Next Feminist Generation, and co-author with Kristen Golden of Remarkable Women of the 20th Century, 100 Portraits of Achievement. Erica Gonzalez-Martinez serves on the board of the Women's Media Center and also steers WMC's eDare, but I'll let her tell you all about that. She is the director of #Power for Puerto Rico, a national coalition of organizations working to clear federal obstacles to the island's abilities to become more self-sufficient. A lifelong activist for social justice and Latinx issues, she was former executive editor of New York's two most famous Latinx newspapers, El Diario and La Prensa, and she built momentum for reforms to the Rockefeller drug laws and the introduction of a domestic workers' Bill of Rights in New York State. Her work is included in the anthology Colonize This, Young Women of Color on Today's Feminism. And Kate McCarthy is the director of programs for the Women's Media Center, with responsibility for WMC's database and training. In these roles, she's responsible for amplifying women's voices in the media by ensuring that journalists and producers have access to a wide range of qualified, diverse experts. Previously, she was at the cutting edge of online political campaigning as the head of the UK Labour Party's campaign department. Kate worked as Director of Candidate Services for Voters for Choice in the United States, a political action committee helping elect hundreds of pro-choice candidates at federal and state levels. An internationalist, Kate has run trainings in many countries and has served on UNICEF's Parliamentary Advisory Group, UK. She's British and presently lives in Washington, D.C. This is the real stuff, folks. This is what media is and what it could be. Who researches it, who defines it, and why, and how, and who gets left out. And most of all, what to do about that. This is a story of women's leadership, ingenuity, creativity, generosity, and political will. And perhaps most of all, this is a story of cross-fertilization and a holistic vision in which each part feeds into the rest and in turn is nourished back. We have to take a brief pause here because we don't want to interrupt our conversation once it gets going, but I'll be right back, so don't go anywhere. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome, gang. Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. It's a delight to have you here. This is the second week of our doing behind the scenes at the Women's Media Center and a different quartet. And I'm just so pleased to host you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Wonderful to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so today it's Frances Nguyen, and it's Barbara Findlin, and it is Erica Gonzalez, and it's Kate McCarthy. So I think we better start with you, Frances, because you're all the way in Istanbul, which is kind of a far place,
Mm-hmm.
and so we might have the call dropped on us at any time, and we don't want to lose you. So let me start with you. You have one of the most difficult desks at the Women's Media Center because you're the editor of WMC's Women Under Siege, which is women in conflict and crisis situations. I'm wondering how you're coping with that and also how you get your stories. I know there's crowdsourcing involved, but where you get them from and what stories are the most, exciting for you and what are you most proud of?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. What am I most proud of? I think it's such an honor to helm this desk from Lauren Wolf, who started this this desk as a project with Gloria to examine and interrogate the different ways that sexualized violence was used as a weapon of war.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, that's extremely heavy in and of itself.
Yeah.
I started in this project as a research volunteer under Lauren, I think in 2014. And what drew me to it and what I'm still most proud of today was that the stories Women Under Siege covers aren't just centered on the violence itself, but the conditions and the structures that enable that violence in the first place.
Yes.
So, you would know better than anyone. You get enough of sensationalist stories whenever you're talking about sex and violence, situated anywhere near each other, right? But what was different about Women Under Siege, and why I came on board, was that there was more there. There was more education to be had.
Mm-hmm.
There were more approaches to what gendered violence even looks like, be it sexualized violence, domestic abuse, obstetric violence, or even financial abuse. So there was such an incredible opportunity to learn about how gendered violence manifests in different political, cultural, social, and religious and linguistic contexts around the world. I think when you talk about violence abroad, there's a huge opportunity to kind of shorthand your understanding and create your own biases. So I think what I'm most proud of is that the stories that we publish challenge those biases.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me some example and give our listeners some example of recent stories.
Sure. So there's one story I was thinking of before I hopped on, by the illustrious Ninotchka Roska, who is a very well-known.
She was here just last week or so. She was in New York and she came by. Yeah. Oh, isn't she a wonderful writer? Go on.
She's wonderful. So she, anytime she pitches me, I'm like, yes, absolutely. I don't even know why you're asking, but
sight unseen. Yep. Sight unseen.
Yeah,
you got it.
It's such a huge honor to work with her. But she wrote a story on gender terrorism in the Philippine elections last year, and I thought that was such a unique and exciting approach to how we are looking at gendered violence, especially. So in the Philippine elections last year, it was between, the son of the former dictator and the at the time the vice president, who was a woman and had openly challenged the very macho president, Rodrigo Duterte at the time, and how their approaches to issues that affected the country, from the pandemic to natural disasters, were so starkly along gendered lines. Every approach has been quite militarized, quite, aggressive in a masculine dominant way.
Right.
And that has been openly challenged by his vice president, or his former vice president, who then was a front-running candidate to take over the presidency. And just observing their individual campaigns and looking at it through a gendered lens, through a lens of gendered violence, was so clever. And I love publishing stories like that. I mean, we also have plenty of stories of feminist movements surviving and enduring patriarchal societies, and that's another window into gendered violence that I'm quite keen to highlight. There are so many entry points into this one subject. It's not just, and I hate to frame it this way, it's not just, there are, mass rapes or mass beatings. The women in these stories are not congealed into a horde. They're,
they're individuals.
And their experiencing is allowed to be unique and singular, but also familiar in different parts of the world.
But you do realize, don't you, how unique a form of journalism this is? I mean, it really is extraordinary. You don't just find it in your average morning paper,
which is
a shame. Yeah, damn right, it's a shame. But but wow, do I applaud you for it? I mean, it is just so vital. We were talking about this last week with the other quartet about climate, for example, and how climate and the attacks against water defenders and earth defenders, most of whom, by the way, are women, a factor into violence against women, and they overlap with your desk. I mean, how amazing it is that all of this is within communication of each other to build this center out to become the force that it is already and can be even more. So, well, don't go anywhere, Frances. You stick around as long as Turkey lets you, okay? Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. But I want to go on to Barbara now. Hi, Barb. Barb and I.
Hello.
Barb and I go back to Ms. Magazine when I was the editor, and she was the executive editor.
So good to be talking with you.
Talk to me, Barb, about being features editor for the Women's Media Center, because that's a very creative post.
Yes, it is. It is really broad what we can do with our feature section, and we do cover a pretty broad range of subject matter, and it incorporates both reporting and commentary. So we have reported pieces. Sometimes we have pieces that are more like op-eds or first-person types of pieces. And what unites them is we are looking to provide progressive women's voices on either stories or trends or things that are ongoing that are underreported or maybe misreported or ignored or misrepresented in other media, or sometimes an angle or an aspect or a perspective on a story that is being reported broadly, but maybe certain
never gets to
on it are not being
right.
Yes.
So that must give you great pride. I mean, since I have written for features a number of times, I know that you're a very fine editor. But I knew that back in the days of Ms. Magazine, and you have a light touch, but a very skillful one. Talk about some of your favorites that have run as features.
We did a story about so-called crisis pregnancy centers and how, because they are really not medical institutions and are not subject to HIPAA requirements, that they are being used to collect information on women who come to them, and there's no regulation about what they can do with that information.
Right.
So, crisis pregnancy centers are an aspect of the whole abortion access story that are a little bit paid attention to, but our way of looking at them was to really delve into the damage that they could be doing and the harm that they could be doing that's even more profound than what we already knew. Another one that we did recently was we did a piece that was about a day of action called the Freedom to Learn National Day of Action to protest classroom censorship and book banning that was sponsored by the African American Policy Forum.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing where, and I really kind of relate to something that Frances said too. A lot of times when we're covering various issues, I really want to look at not just the crisis that is happening, but the way that activists are responding to the crisis. So we put a lot of emphasis on looking at what various organizations, activists, advocates are doing to work together to combat things. And we try to really put a focus on the activism and the fighting back.
Yeah. That's like the great late Pat Schroeder's line. You can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time.
Exactly.
And it gives people hope, because if they're just getting bad news with no ameliorating factors about women's resistance, they fall into despair.
Yes, and the resistance is always there.
That's right.
It's always there.
It is. And it's fantastic. Now, Barbara, you have to tell me what the process is, because wherever I go, people are always saying to me, do you think this would be a feature? I mean, do I just send them on to you? What do I do? What is the process? If people
You
want
could
to
send them on to me, sure. Sure. And sometimes, and I'm happy to engage with people who are interested in developing stories for the feature section. Sometimes there's an idea that really requires, the sort of description of the range of what we covered that I just talked about. Sometimes an idea needs to be developed a little bit to kind of fall into it. Even though the range of what we cover is very broad, I am looking for something that you are not going to find in your daily paper.
Right.
So it's going to be a part of the story that isn't told or is being misrepresented, or it's going to be a story that we're not hearing about or a perspective that we're not hearing about.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I can work with a contributor to develop that kind of perspective and develop something that will be interesting for people to read that they're not reading elsewhere.
Right. So I just wanted some guidance on that, because people do read it a lot, and they look for the different viewpoints. They know it is a conduit for outside, unquote, voices. And because the Women's Media Center staff itself, in all of its diversity, is so rich, they think they must have a place there. And many do, but I just didn't know how many, all which, what were the criteria.
It really is such a privilege to be able to, have this editorial forum and to be working in this editorial forum and working with the incredible range of contributors that we have.
Now I want to go on to Erica Gonzalez Martinez. Hi, Erica.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my dear, my pleasure. Now, I talked about your distinguished experience with La Prensa and El Diario in the introduction. But your steerage, the fact that you steer IDAR, first of all, explain to the listener audience who might not know what IDAR is and for whom it's named and all that good stuff.
So thanks, Robin. I want to say first and foremost that it's been a pleasure to be the founding editor of this space at the Women's Media Center, because so many Latinas are lacking spaces to be able to share their analysis and stories. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done and the fact that the Women's Media Center thought about this and has been so incredibly supportive, and of the vision that you and Jane Fonda and Gloria Steinem had to create this institution, because it is an institution. And I tell everyone, the fact that you're seeing more women here and there, even though there's still so many challenges, that's because of the steady work that's been done for nearly 2 decades. So Thank you, Robin. So I remind, because people forget there was a time that you would watch the Sunday shows and there were no women. So I think it's important to remind people. Idal is named after Jovita Idal, who was a badass journalist from Texas, who in the late 1920s, was reporting on how the Texas Rangers were lynching Mexican Americans and Mexicans, and was really denouncing this. At a later time, I think they'd lived throughout each other's lifetimes, but she was younger. But I think I always note how she was within the lifespan of Ida B. Wells, and they were both doing similar work, obviously, to denounce lynchings and racism, and it's a powerful story. And she was a feminist. She supported women's rights, women's education. She supported the revolution in Mexico. So she's really this amazing woman who, when the Texas Rangers showed up at the door of the publication where she worked, she barred them, and she cited the Constitution and freedom of the press. And this petite woman in front of this military that was doing such horrific work in the Southwest, And the next day they came and destroyed the presses, and she kept going. And there's a really nice animated story about her on PBS, American Masters, I believe. So I urge everyone to look that up.
It is
But
lovely.
what we try to do, yes, what we try to do at IDAL is give space to Latinas who are not given the opportunity to write or write as frequently, to hone their skills, and to document work that Latinas are doing that's not being documented or underdocumented, and also to talk about power and the way that it moves. Because too often the stories that we see out there about our community and its complexity are from a behavioral lens, as if like as if there's not power and money that's operating to influence our community, to impact our lives. These are the things Latinos do, as opposed to looking at, for example, if you're going to talk about voting trends, well, in the Rio Grande Valley or in Texas, but let's talk about the oil and gas industry and its impact on employment.
Yeah.
So we try to kind of rupture the sort of merry-go-round narratives out there, and tell the story from what's really happening.
Wow. Oh, God. So tell me also, and our listeners, what kinds of stories and what kinds of writers you pursue or pursue you, and what gives you particular pride? What do you glow in the dark over with delight when you think, I published that?
Great question. I'll usually on social media, I'll look at someone who's had sharp commentary. I look for up-and-coming writers at publications. So I've had somebody, I think, who worked at the Arizona Republic, who wrote a story about how Spanish language reporters are lowballed, even though they do work in two languages at some of the major news media corporations. And then people who have particular expertise that don't get highlighted elsewhere. So I'm often combing through and inviting folks. Sometimes I get people who pitch, but more often it's me observing, understanding, sort of looking at the field of Latinas who have such great, diverse expertise, and inviting them. And it takes a little bit sometimes, because they're doing other stuff, and or because they haven't been used to writing an op-ed, for example, if that's what they want to do. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the payoff in terms of the expertise, and being sort of a partner in skills development is really good. And in terms of pieces I'm proud of, so there are a bunch that stand out. I will say that we embarked on I think it was a 5 or 6 months project to develop a set of essays around the West Side Story production, and it was three Latinas from different generations, including one who was a part of the migration generation that's basically emphasized in that production and the reboot that happened. And that series, that package of essays, got cited all over the place, and it was highlighted one month by one of the top 5. The writers, including myself, were interviewed for a podcast, and that podcast got selected as one of the top podcast episodes by Spotify editors. And I think it's because we were offering added value. We were talking about perspectives and experiences that weren't being highlighted in the sea of publicity around the production, and Puerto Rican women in particular, as well as Latinas, have been affected for decades by some of the imagery. And then the second one I would say, because I think the Washington Post picked up the story a few months. You know how some of these bigger publications look at outlets and comb for ideas, and then they act like they hatched the idea on their own. So, and I don't want to say because it was my piece, but it was I was surprised that this wasn't highlighted all over the place. But 2 of the women that were a part of the prosecutorial team in the Derek Chauvin murder case were Latinas, and even Spanish language media hadn't honed in on this. And I wrote a piece, I interviewed them, and I talked about their stories and how they got to where they were at, and in a much, and not in a superficial way. So that story got picked up by so many bar associations, law associations. People just really circulated it, and then I think I believe it was the Washington Post that had the same kind of angle a few months later.
This is just great stuff. It's the cross fertilization that goes on at the WMC that really makes my heart beat faster. I mean, I don't think any of us, I don't think Gloria, Jane, or I had that in mind when we came up with this idea. And I think you're right, Erica. I think that every incremental piece of pressure we bring matters, and it feeds into the pressure that eventually changes the monolith.
Agree.
This leads us, of course, to Kate. Kate, you're the director of programs. You got responsibility for SheSource. That's the database. And it goes on, and of course the trainings. And we haven't spoken much on last week or this week on the trainings on progressive women's voices. So I'd like to do that, but I'd also like to let you loose on SheSource.
Thank you, Robin. It's fabulous to be here and wonderful to hear your voice. Before I go into SheSource, the activist part of me, as I know you and I share that activism basis, as you know, the women's media is a mixture between the journalists amongst our team and the activists amongst our team. And as an activist, I want to remind everybody that all of the fabulous content you've just heard about is all available on a weekly basis if you sign up for our email. WMC News, which comes out towards the end of each week and covers all of the content that we produce, including in Spanish for Airdate, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
So that I had to put that in quickly.
No, I'm very glad you did.
So the work of the Women's Media Centre, I always think, is, as you're saying, really holistic. People understand that women are underrepresented, diverse women are underrepresented in the media, and that coverage is really slanted towards the male white perspective. But they don't, I think, actually know what the numbers really are and how bad the problem is until you see our research. Right. So the research that one of the pieces of research that we did recently was on the Sunday shows, where it showed that 53%, over 50% of the people who were guests on those shows were white men. Which is astonishing when white men make up less than 30% of the population. Even when the Black Lives Matter was the main subject of the discussion, white men talked about it more than either black men or black women. So there is still a real problem. I think I recognize what Erica's saying, and saying that things have changed and the work that we've been doing has begun to make a difference, but we're still far from where we need to be. And I think that's really important to remember. And why that's important isn't just, as we all know, because we want to see more women and more diverse women on the media. It's because it makes a difference, a huge difference. We did 2 pieces of research, one looking at reproductive rights, and the other one looking at campus rape. And we found that the women journalists talked more to women's sources, male journalists talked to male sources. And in both those studies, the male sources and the female sources talked about the issues in a different way.
Sure they do.
So around reproduction or reproductive issues, the women talked about it as a health issue, whereas the men talked about it as a legislative issue or a political issue. And I think that's where the nuance comes. I mean, as we've seen and as is happening, all of the reproductive rights and anti-abortion stuff that's going down, maybe if women had had more say in the media over all of these years, it would have remained in the sphere of being more of a health issue and less of a political issue.
Yep.
In the Sunday shows, the fact that there was almost no talk of domestic violence in the COVID conversation.
No, I know.
I think there was 6 mentions.
Makes you crazy. It makes me absolutely insane. Yeah.
Which is why SheSource is so important. I mean, I think what we try and do with SheSource is we've got over 2,000 experts. We work really hard to ensure that it's diversity, both racial diversity and ethnic diversity, but also diversity by geography, by what sort of expertise somebody has, whether they're an academic, whether they're an activist, whether they're somebody who has had the lived experience. So we have a variety of different experts. depending on the issue. And we work hard to try and ensure we can get experts from every state. We're nearly there. I think we've got 2 states where we don't have an expert.
2 states. Oh.
We believe really strongly that media outlets should do their research and do their numbers and count their numbers, because if you don't count it, it doesn't change.
You think?
And we hold ourselves to the same high bar. Oh, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
I think if you count the number of women you have on, for example, or the number of people of colour you have on your show,
of course,
then you realise that actually there's people's voices who are missing.
Yeah.
So we do our own counting. So we work hard to ensure that She Source is diverse. We work with media outlets and with journalists to help them build their own lists. What's really interesting about She Source is we were one of the first lists of diverse women experts. And people like NPR now have their own lists. And NPR goes through our list and cherry picks.
Ah, not fair.
Our experts.
Not fair. Not fair at all.
I actually think it's quite great, because our point is to get more women out there and more women's voices out there.
Well, you're very generous.
So if NPR amplifies that, then great. So we work with journalists individually and with production houses. So we'll go and do presentations to different shows on MSNBC, or we'll go to somewhere like Bloomberg and have a pizza party and invite the journalists in to talk to us about why this is important. So I think that's really important. And then we send out a weekly email, and journalists can sign up for our weekly email on the website. And that email does 2 things. First of all, it highlights to the journalists that there are a whole bunch of women out there, which sometimes they forget. And secondly, it raises the profile of the individual experts who we're focusing on.
Yes.
The number of extraordinary experts that we have in She Source is quite amazing. I mean, I've worked on it for many years now, and every day I'm amazed at how many brilliant women there are, and how many women there are doing extraordinary things that should be getting more coverage.
Yeah. And talk about also, Kate, because I know you oversee that as well, the progressive women's voices, because we train women in media and media savviness, if that's a word, and those are very successful as well.
Yes. So I love progressive women's voices. It's probably the highlight of my work here, that in our event. But we train progressive women leaders to, as you say, be media ready and media savvy. We generally have about 10 times more women apply to our training than we actually are able to train.
Interesting.
We would love to do more training, but it's such high quality training, and we work with extraordinary trainers. That's what limits it. So far, we've trained over 350 women leaders. 67%, 2/3 of them are women of colour. 29% of the people who we've trained to answer the question are LGBTQ. We work hard to get geographic distribution of our trainees. And we work hard to try and train leaders on issues that are particularly pertinent to the moment. So, for example, since the Me Too hashtag had such a massive rise in importance and perspective, we've trained many, many leaders across the whole country on sexualized violence and how to combat sexualized violence. We work a lot at the moment, and we've got a particular outreach at the moment to Native American communities to ensure that there are more Native American women voices in the media, because they are probably the least representative demographic. We've worked really hard to increase the number of Latinos who are training, because again, Hispanic women are really, really underrepresented in the media. So we're working really hard to ensure that what we're doing is making the biggest impact. We train leaders who are working on climate change, leaders who are working on reproductive health issues, racial justice, economic justice. And in our training, we have small cohorts of around 10 leaders, and we go through how they can present their message most effectively in the media and how to understand the practicalities of doing it. Mm. We look at how to establish yourself as an expert. So why would a journalist want to contact you rather than somebody else? Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that your profile online or your profile offline is giving a perspective that showcases you?
Yeah, that's a problem for many women, who have a terminal modesty, and in putting themselves forward. So it's very good that we do that.
I think it's that. And then I also think it's the fact that, as we all know, if you work in the nonprofit area, as many of our leaders do, we all have too many hats and not enough time to do the things that we want to do. And so finding the time to write something on LinkedIn or to put out an opinion or to build that side of it so a journalist can easily find where you're coming from is time consuming. So we help people manage their times by putting a slot in once a week that says, this is my slot for media work. And it might be developing your message. It might be building relationships with journalists. It might be et cetera, et cetera. We're super excited this year because we're going back to training in person for the first time since the beginning of COVID.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's right. Of course, the trainings were all online. I mean, they were Zoomed or however. I mean, but this is a different cup of tea. I have to tell you that last week and this week, and just hearing directly from the editors and the women who are steering these desks is like nothing else. It is so impressive. And I say this as a humble founder. We had no bloody idea what we were doing. We just thought, well, we need this, and so let's try to raise some money and get it going. But it has grown into a miracle. And it's continuing. Yeah. Is there anything... Go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to say, I think Julia's brilliant. She really is. And I think she gives us guidance and leadership. And I know she also really appreciates the support that she gets from you and Gloria and Jane and other people on the board.
Now, before we wind this up, is there anything that any of you would like to say about each other's work and how it intersects with yours or doesn't, or what you wish it would do more, or anything of that sort? Feel free. This is the space to do that. Anything?
Well, this is Barbara speaking. Two things. One, I echo something that was said before about how the different functions within Women's Media Center support each other and reinforce each other. And it's true for features too, where even I will often use She-Source as a source for not just experts who can be sources, but writers who can speak who can write in their area of expertise. And my other thought is, Robin, to your point about how there were certain things that you didn't envision when founding the organization, it strikes me that when you start an organization with very sound values and sound ideas and a clear mission, good things will happen, even if they're not specific results that you envisioned. It's going to grow in a really good way, and new things are going to develop that are based all from that very sound basis that it was started from. So even if you couldn't have envisioned some of the things that are happening with the organization, I think the potential for all of those things was planted there from the beginning.
Oh, thank you, Barbara. Well, you're very wise, because all we knew was that Richard Viguerie, who was a right-wing figure and who has lots of money, was setting up these sort of boot camps for media girls. I use the word advisedly. And he was churning out these graduates who were, bushy-tailed blonde Barbie dolls who would smile their way through why it was wonderful that, later on Trump would become president. And that was their line, and he was churning them out, and it was making us crazy. And we sort of thought, well, why don't we have wait? And as it came from that, it came from wanting to see more women. It came from wanting to hear what women were saying. It's the same heartbeat of feminism, So in that sense, you're right. It's just the specificity of what you're doing, which doesn't overlook detail. On the contrary, it's the application of that detail and the attention to detail that is so damned impressive. So thank you, Barbara. Anybody else want to comment on anybody else?
Yes, I want to add. I'm sorry, this is Erica. I just wanted to add that it's super. I mean, I regularly get emails from the team just in terms of reports that have been released or news stories or possible writers. So I appreciate that collegiality and people looking out, and then also the reports that the WMC team, Kate and everyone else, Crystal produce are amazing. That's data that's not available anywhere else, or from our specific lens. We in some of the pieces that I've published, we've quoted it because there's no other source, and I regularly post the graphics and some of the data from there, and it outrages people like Maria Hinojosa, who then, push the information out again. And I'm sure that there's a legion of women who go in with those reports to their newsrooms and outlets and say, hey, look at this. And hopefully, I mean, I wish there was a way for sort of measuring for getting that information, but the data helps people advocate. So it's a shaming tactic, if nothing else motivates folks. So I really think it's the team, the institution, the vision just really is doing amazing work with looking at representation in a way that's very in-depth and multi-platform, and that really isn't being paid attention to anywhere else.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Erica. I mean, it is just incredible. Maria Teresa Kumar was on this program recently, and she was saying that she uses it as well, and pushes it out over whatever it is, MSNBC or CNN. So it gets used, it gets consumed, it gets spread, it catches like a healthy contagion, and it's the other side of the news. I often refer to the fact that women live in an alternate reality, and women of color even more so. And so it's bringing that reality into consciousness, and what a different world it would be. Well, is there anybody else that needs to say something? Okay, well, listen, are you still there, Frances? In Turkey? Oh, no, she dropped off a while ago. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Frances, ever the enterprising journalist, young journalist, has sent in an email from Turkey saying that she was dropped on the call and she can't get back on, but she was eager to answer the question about what does she look for in writers. And so she wrote the following: I desperately need experienced writers. This is for Women Under Siege, that desk. And those experienced writers are hard to come by, which is why we here don't publish as often as we would like in my desk. Reporting on these issues takes extreme care and sensitivity and humility, and that isn't always taught. I think most writers outside the West and global North are conditioned to believe that they need to lead with the most sensational or salacious details in order for their pitches to be sold to Western outlets, and our industry is culpable in that belief. But I personally don't want stories of horrible violence against women just for the sake of it. I want stories that offer the reader an opportunity to be educated and in many cases to challenge long-held beliefs and biases. Well, thank you, Frances. And thank you to the rest of you. It's a really important institution. And I am so proud to be a small part in it. And I know the other two founders are as well. And we'll turn up
A big part.
well, we're gonna
Exactly.
we're gonna turn up our toes at some point, probably sooner rather than later. But this will live on and thrive, and you're its future, and more of you. So thank you, and thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Love you very much.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you too. We're honored.
Time for one last pause before fighting words. Or perhaps this week we should term it Happy Plans, because I've asked Julie Burton, President and CEO of the WMC, to return, first, in case there was anything she forgot last week, and second, more importantly, to talk about plans for the wonderful future. And then I'll return with some thoughts about the summer. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Forget anything? Those can be fighting words.
Yes, of course, there's something I left out. So I am grateful for the opportunity to talk about two other very important projects at the Women's Media Center. One is a new project. We received a bequest from Beverly Wettenstein, who was a journalist in New York City, to create a lecture series in her name, a women's history lecture series.
Wonderful.
And we thought the first lecture should be by an Indigenous woman, because we're doing U.S. women's history.
Mm-hmm.
So we should start with the Indigenous women.
Mm-hmm.
And the site we chose was Westfield State University because of the history, the representation, and the inclusion that this university embodies. It was founded in 1839 by the abolitionist and public education champion Horace Mann as the first coeducational college in the United States to welcome students of all genders, races, economic abilities, and religions. So we did it there. It felt like we were in the right place at the right time. And Dr. Christina Azokar, who was on the inaugural board of the Women's Media Center, gave the inaugural lecture. For this series. She presented Pocahontas chic, damaging media representations of Indigenous women. And it was very interesting. I mean, the speech was fantastic. In advance of the speech, she communicated to me and to Westfield State that if a land acknowledgement was going to be made, she would like an action component to go with it. And the university came up with a number of action components. They're very nice, and they are included in the printed program. But they also followed up with her and said, is there something you'd like to suggest? And she said, well, it would be nice if Indigenous students could get free tuition. And so, the university discussed that. In Massachusetts, it turns out that Indigenous people do get free tuition, but the fees to go to school are equally as high as tuition, and those are not covered. So it's still prohibitive for many people to attend these universities.
Sure.
The president of the university attended the lecture, and she made an announcement that going forward, any Indigenous student who is a resident of Massachusetts who would like to attend Westfield State University would have their fees and their tuition covered.
Isn't that miraculous? It's not. It's good politics, actually. There's nothing miraculous about it. Isn't that beautiful? Oh.
It is beautiful, and it would not have happened but for this lecture series and this speaker and this moment and the history and legacy of this university. So it was really something I'm really proud of. And
I should think so, yeah.
Yeah, you talk about impact. That's impact in one state, but, it's a model
That's
for
right.
what other states could do. There's another project that we do every year that is truly important to the organization, and it's our Women's Media Awards.
Oh, of
it's
course.
Our big event every year where we celebrate women champions in media, in film, in television, and technology, those leaders who are making an impact in media.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the great moments of our year to be able to highlight these women, and we always have WMC Progressive Women's Voices Impact Awards for graduates of our training program who have gone on to do amazing things. And it's an incredibly stellar group of honorees. In the past, some of them include Robin Roberts from ABC, Andrea Mitchell from NBC,
Mm-hmm.
Gayle King from CBS, Ashley Judd, just weeks after the New York Times story broke on Harvey Weinstein.
Yep.
Salamisha Tillett from the New York Times, Hillary Clinton,
Mm-hmm.
Gwen Ifill and Judy Woodruff from PBS,
Right.
Salma Hayek, Maria Hinojosa, Samantha Bee, Joy Reid, April Ryan, the White House correspondent
Right.
of the American Radio Urban Networks, Regina K. Scully, Soledad O'Brien from CNN, Katie Couric, Christine Amanpour, Sheila Johnson. Barbara Walters.
That's right.
It goes on, and it's a list I'm really proud is part of our legacy now.
They're also such joyous evenings. They really are. Turning to the future, and I know that the Women's Media Center Lab has lots of ideas going around in that brain of Julie Burton's.
But we've been talking about how we build on what we've created already.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to start with 51% of the population consists of women, but only 2% of all philanthropic giving supports women's and girls organizations.
Yeah.
2%. There needs to be a call to action to funders and individuals to step up their support and to stand with women and girls, because that is not going to get us to equity or to equality. It's just not going to get there. So the whole sector is in need, like the whole women's sector, of more funding. But speaking of funders, a funder recently told me that she believes the Women's Media Center consistently punches above its weight. And that really captured my imagination, because I agree.
Yeah.
And we do a lot with a small and mighty team.
Yeah.
And I just was thinking, imagine what we could do if we had transformative support of our work. Like, with more funding, the future could include Women's Media Center bureaus in major global areas, staffed by local journalists.
Yes, of course.
It could mean that, I can tell you, every time any of us on staff travel internationally for work, we hear from our hosts that their country needs a Women's Media Center.
That's right.
And their country needs a WMC She Source.
Right.
And while we do global work, there's no question we do, the ability to have bureaus with local people in major areas would be transformational.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
With more funding, we could have a full-time training and leadership program, expanding across the country and locally and globally. With more funding, our 6 journalism channels could each expand their editorial staff, their production staff, their writers, and rather than doing 5 important stories per week, we could produce daily articles on each of these channels.
Right.
And to have, in fact, the ability to have an investigative journalism team would be phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's something to dream of. And then there's the WMC Media Lab. With more funding, we could develop a full-time in-house research team for our WMC Media Lab. We've made all this research happen. We've brought in various teams, and we create it because it matters and it gives us the evidence we need.
Right.
But if we had a funded, full-time team doing nothing but research, this would allow quick reports, the ability to cross-reference different reports to respond in timely news developments. It would make it possible for us to do much more research on race and gender, both as topics and for representation.
Of course.
And the data we produce in our research is a roadmap of where we are and where we need to go.
Yeah.
I mean, we know the path. We have effective, impactful, interconnected strategies to guide us. We just need the fuel to sustain the road trip to equality. And we need our funding partners and friends to ramp up and help make that vision possible, help us level the playing field.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so proud of the team you've spent 2 weeks interviewing, and I'm just so proud to work with them every day and for their leadership and their vision. They all have their own areas of expertise, and they bring representation and inclusion to everything that we do. And people may not know. I mean, we, from the very beginning, we have had a board that is fully diverse.
Right.
It's 50% women of color. Our staff is 50% women of color. Those who are in leadership positions in the staff, it's 50% women of color. And this just didn't happen after Black Lives Matter. This has been our commitment, and our training has been towards, inclusion and making sure everybody belongs. Yeah. And everything we've been doing for these, 18 years has been modeling how organizations should be shaped. And I'm just really proud of the team. And this team has been solid for many, many years now. We've had no turnover.
Well, you should know that they are very proud of you. And that's come through in these conversations I've had with them. It was very moving to me because your passion for this organization is contagious, and they've caught that. To have an honest voice that you can really trust, and that's a word that gets used a lot when people mention the WMC to me. I can trust it. And that trust is not bought cheaply, and I think we treasure it, and it's our jewel. So I want to thank you, my dear, for everything you've done. And I'm going to wind up our season next, but this has been an amazing 2 weeks, and I've got to go back and tell my other two sister co-founders what we have wrought. We can't take the credit for it, but we sure as hell can be proud.
Thank you. And in Jane's words, onward.
So onward to have a wonderful, nourishing summer. If you get a minute, drop in on womensmediacenter.com and see for yourself what we've been talking about. It's quite exciting. And we look forward to the fall when there's a lot of excitement. I've got a new book of poems ready to launch, and we've got an election year coming up. So I'll see you in September. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at The Robin Morgan. And you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.